This video is about the philosophy and psychology of conspiracy theories. It is mostly based on two books on conspiracy theories, fairly recently published in Finland, one by a philosopher and the other by a psychologist. The first of these books is Salaliittoteorioiden filosofia, Temppeliherroista liskoihmisiin by Juha Räikkä. The title would translate to The Philosophy of Conspiracy Theories from Templars to Lizard People. The second is Salaliitot ympärilläni, Miksi totuus ei kiinnosta aivojamme by Jukka Häkkinen. The title would translate to Conspiracies around me. Why aren't our brains interested in the truth? As you may have guessed, Räikkä is the philosopher and Häkkinen is the psychologist, and they naturally have slightly different approaches to the same subject. I will combine their key points here. This video will contain 6 parts. In the first, I will loosely define the subject at hand, conspiracy theories, what they are and what they are not. If you somehow don't know anything about the topic beforehand, you will get the gist of the matter soon enough. In the second part, I will discuss some of the basic arguments for a mega conspiracy. The term refers to what people are usually most interested in when discussing conspiracy theories, and this section will give you an idea of the thinking behind some of the weird conspiracy beliefs. In the third part, I will explain who believes in conspiracy theories, and the answer to that might surprise some of you. The fourth part is about explaining why they believe in conspiracy theories. These 2 consecutive parts are probably the most important for understanding the phenomenon. The fifth part is dedicated to the reason why researchers and scientific skeptics, among others, are interested in the topic. What harm belief in conspiracy theories causes or may cause. The sixth and last part is a brief overview of ways to avoid falling for unjustified beliefs about conspiracy theories, or what we as a society can do to prevent that. My name is Jouni Vilkka, and this is my channel, TFF Teacher from Finland. Don't forget to subscribe and click the thumbs up button. The word conspiracy comes from the Latin words con and spirare, and literally means breathing together. This should evoke the idea of people whispering to each other so that others cannot hear what is being said. A conspiracy thus always involves more than one person, and usually secrecy is necessary to achieve the goal, which is usually more nefarious than organizing a birthday party. An actual conspiracy is a process, Räikkä explains, and as all processes involves 3 phases: planning, execution and aftermath. The planning phase always has to be kept secret for obvious reasons. The execution can sometimes be done in public, as has been done in some assassinations, where the conspirators have wanted to make clear that they have done the deed and why they did it. Julius Caesar comes to mind. Räikkä points out that some alleged conspiracies do not require any evil intent. For example, Elvis Presley could have wanted to fake his own death just to avoid publicity. Also, conspirators in many cases have actually considered their plan morally justified. It is easy to agree that the plans to assassinate Hitler were justified. Conspiracies do go against moral prima facie duties, of course, but the point of such duties is that we are supposed to obey them only insofar as there are no good reasons to ignore them. Murder is wrong in general, but it is clear that there are good ethical reasons to assassinate a dictator. Not just any secret activities can be reasonably called conspiracies, Räikkä knows. For example, criminal organizations and militaries, at least during a war, operate in secrecy. They obviously couldn't be open about their activities and expect success. The difference is that in a conspiracy, the activity is something the participants are not supposed to be doing. Actual conspiracies are not uncommon, Räikkä reminds us, but when we are talking about conspiracy theories, we typically mean something a bit different from ordinary explanations of, say, historical events that involve conspiracies. The conspiracy theories typically discussed by academic researchers in fields like philosophy and social psychology can be defined as 1. Political or non-political, and 2. Mega-conspiracy theories or ordinary conspiracies. Despite the use of the word theory, these conspiracy stories are not scientific theories. Räikkä explains that the term conspiracy theory is usually used to refer to a belief in a conspiracy for which there is very little good evidence and which is not generally accepted as real. In fact, these beliefs are often derided, made fun of. This is especially the case when the alleged conspiracy involves lizard people, aliens from outer space, ancient secret organizations, huge global conspiracies secretly controlling national governments and all information in mainstream media, and so on. These beliefs go against the consensus of knowledge-producing experts, such as proper researchers, journalists, and government officials, who are convinced that the claimed conspiracy does not actually exist. Conspiracy theories, in other words, usually mean views that contradict public knowledge. It is logically possible, of course, that a given conspiracy theory is actually true, and the consensus view of relevant professionals is wrong, but that doesn't mean believing in the theory is justified. Rationality requires an epistemic justification for believing anything. There are even ethical reasons for this, as I will explain later, that are especially relevant in the context of conspiracy theories. Although conspiracy theories in general have a questionable reputation, the common use of the term does not imply anything particularly irrational or unreasonable. Sure, some of the beliefs belong in the category of tinfoil hat crazy talk, but more commonly, conspiracy theories merely involve explanations of an event by 1. Appealing to a conspiracy that 2. is in contradiction with the prevailing explanation of the event, and 3. typically accept a lower standard of evidence than that required of ordinary explanations involving conspiracies in academic research in history or social science, as Räikkä explains. I should emphasize that an individual journalist or a researcher can, of course, also be a conspiracy theorist, just as there are always individual scientists who are cranks or crackpots, supporters of some really weird pseudoscientific beliefs or belief systems. Just like in science, it is the consensus of experts that matters, so it is with conspiracy theories as well. A few outliers will always go against the mainstream. Räikkä also notes that it is possible for someone who believes in conspiracy theories to think of themselves as very scientific in their thinking. Unfortunately, that is not the same as actually thinking scientifically. The difference is that in the case of the conspiracy theory, the proponent accepts the claim about the existence of the conspiracy much more easily than the academic researchers and respectable journalists in general would accept such claims. Räikkä calls the low standard of evidence for the theory a conspiracy ideological standard of evidence. While easily accepting the belief in the conspiracy, the supporters of the conspiracy theory direct an unusually high level of skepticism at the prevailing view and mainstream research. Many of the events of the world seem to be the unintended and unpredicted consequences of otherwise intentional activities. Especially as the desires and aspirations of many different parties are in conflict, it is clear that what actually occurs is not what any one of those parties intended. Karl Marx already pointed that out in the 19th century. Proper social critique that may actually bring about meaningful change relies on facts and does not meddle with unfounded conspiracy claims. Typical conspiracy theorists, on the other hand, wildly speculate from their armchairs, claiming to be able to easily solve problems that whole teams of experts have difficulties with. There are many different kinds of conspiracy theories, some more far-fetched than others. Bradley Franks analyzed conspiracy theories into 5 different groups based on his interviews of people showing interest in conspiracy theories, by the kinds of conspiracy beliefs they reported. My summary of them here is based on the book by Häkkinen. Group 1 saw a lot of problems in society in need of fixing. They saw themselves as open-minded thinkers and did not believe in grand conspiracies or the evil intentions of politicians. Group 2 believed that there is a different reality behind appearances, which is sometimes being covered up. They didn't believe in weird stories about lizard people, but thought that conspiracies are possible and that mainstream explanations are sometimes implausible. Group 3 members were opposed to mainstream media, considering it to be spewing falsehoods. They were dedicated to some conspiracy theory, for example about chemtrails being released from commercial airplanes for the purpose of influencing people somehow. They still did not believe in all-encompassing conspiracies. Group 4 considered all mainstream knowledge an illusion to hide practically omnipotent actors controlling things like the economy and climate behind the scenes. This group was very distrustful of all authorities and media. Members of this group saw individual alleged conspiracies as only parts of a greater all-encompassing conspiracy. The assassination of JFK and the Charlie Hebdo massacre were thus merely fragments of the vast conspiracy behind them all. These people often described realizing the existence of this great conspiracy as a religious awakening or enlightenment. They saw other people as sheep being herded by the conspirators. Group 5 was much like Group 4, but for members of this group, reality was completely illusory. This was the group of those who believed the most outlandish conspiracy theories about lizard people, supernatural powers, and so on. Interestingly, none of the people interviewed accepted the term conspiracy theorist, preferring to describe themselves as open-minded truth seekers. They just had alternate views about reality. Räikkä defines mega-conspiracy as a grand conspiracy which is somehow able to fool nearly all of us. The epistemic authorities in this case are not actually very trustworthy, and vast masses of people are being manipulated to believe what we in fact do believe in order for them to be easily controlled. Rousseau, for one, believed that a civil or civic religion is required or used by societies to control their populations. Perhaps even now, a similar reasoning is motivating a mega-conspiracy. Räikkä distinguishes 3 types of arguments for the existence of a mega-conspiracy. 1. An inductive argument, 2. A forensic argument, and 3. An argument from collective self-deception. The inductive argument is based on our knowledge of the prevalence of selfish conspiracies and other dishonest behaviors. This is used to infer that there are probably also some global malevolent conspiracies. But the existence of revealed conspiracies does not justify believing in unsubstantiated claims about conspiracies, especially of a kind very different from the ones that have been revealed. that would be a faulty generalization. Secrecy has not been necessary for doing nefarious things in the past, is not now, and is not likely to be in the future. A lot of evil is being done out in the open. Just look at the genocide in Gaza, or what is being done under the Trump administration in the US. Of course, some operations have been planned in secret, sometimes involving conspiracies, but most evil things are not explained by conspiracies. Räikkä notes that secrecy requires resources and tough deliberation. If these are not necessary, they are unlikely to be used. The forensic argument mimics the way criminal investigators supposedly think. They look for a motive, opportunity, and the means to perform the act in question. The problem in the case of a mega-conspiracy is that it is not even clear what kind of conspiracy we are talking about, and so it is difficult to figure out who might have the motive, opportunity, and means to do it. Räikkä also doubts that it would be possible to control epistemic authorities and to prevent other people from assessing their authority, and even to do all of that in secrecy. And that would be required for the conspiracy to work. The thing is, our trust in the epistemic authorities is not merely hope. Räikkä explains that we can, for example, learn about evolution to be able to look at fossils and understand how they relate to evolution. Our fears and wishes have nothing to do with this understanding. We can therefore trust biologists and geologists to be doing what they are supposed to be doing. Epistemic authorities have been creating knowledge pretty well in the past, and our trust in them continuing to do so can be tested and does not have to rely on hope. The argument from collective self-deception is based on the idea that people sometimes do seem to be deceiving themselves because they want something to be true. A person in love, wanting to believe their object of love to reciprocate their love, is one example Räikkä uses. But there is no precedent of a global conspiracy of people deceiving themselves in the same way. Further, as seen in the previous case, our trust in the epistemic authorities, especially when there is a consensus on the subject in question among them, is more strongly justified than the belief in a mega-conspiracy. These are all very general points, obviously, and for obvious reasons. There are detailed arguments against specific claims about mega-conspiracies, but this is not the place to discuss them. Here the point is simply to discuss the kind of thinking involved in conspiracy theories in general. Although conspiracy theories are in some sense fringe beliefs, Räikkä points out that they are far from uncommon, as hundreds of millions of people all around the world are claimed to believe in at least some of them. According to Häkkinen, surprisingly many people believe in a conspiracy theory, at least at some point during their life. The strength of belief varies over time and from person to person, of course. There is no single type of person who believes in conspiracy theories. A 2013 study in the US found that 63% of the responders believed in at least one conspiracy theory, and more recently it was found that more than half of the population believed in at least one conspiracy theory related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Similarly, according to a different study, a whopping 80% of French people believe in at least one conspiracy theory, and almost half of the French people seem to believe in the ludicrous Great Replacement conspiracy theory, according to which global elites and the mass media are trying to replace white Europeans with Islamic immigrants. Conspiracy theories get a lot of attention in the media these days, and one might think that that is the reason they are so popular. But just because they are brought to public awareness, it does not follow that more people actually believe them now than in the past, Räikkä reminds us. The number of different conspiracy theories has increased over time, but it may be that the number of people who believe in them has remained more or less the same. Häkkinen adds that an analysis of the prevalence of such beliefs found that the golden age of conspiracy theories actually started in the end of the 19th century. Conspiracy theories have actually been with us always, not just in the most recent times. The only difference is that now they are global, rapidly spread by movies, TV and social media, especially from the US to the rest of the world. Conspiracy beliefs become obsolete and forgotten, but they are replaced by new ones, perhaps keeping the number of current conspiracy theories roughly the same. It may be, as Häkkinen mentions, that the seemingly rising number of conspiracy theories is just an illusion caused by an increase in reporting about them in the news. Since the COVID pandemic that began in 2019, many conspiracy theories about its origin have been circulating widely. As Räikkä reminds us, conspiracy theories about contagious diseases are not uncommon. In fact, the swine influenza, AIDS, the so-called Spanish flu, and the Black Death have all generated a lot of conspiracy theories. What makes COVID-19 different is the unusual amount of publicity those theories have received in the media. It is mainly this that has made conspiracy theories in general a common topic of public discussion. Whenever something dramatic occurs, especially something disastrous, it is common for someone to quickly publish their own opinion about it on social media. After this, others join in and the story begins to be formed in cooperation. Räikkä states that the claimed huge popularity of conspiracy theories is a bit of a confusion. They do get a lot of publicity on the internet, but that does not mean people actually support them in equal measure. There are many reasons for developing or sharing conspiracy theories. Räikkä lists humor, money, and concealing a real conspiracy as some reasons. He finds it most interesting that sometimes a supporter of a conspiracy theory seems to think they believe in the theory, when in fact they do not. By showing their support for the idea, they may be expressing something else, such as their disappointment, bitterness, or worry. This means that attempts to get rid of conspiracy theories that focus on removing such beliefs will fail, as many of the supporters of the theories do not have such beliefs. Claims about certain percentages of people in a given country believing in a conspiracy theory are also misleading, because many of those reporting to believe in the theory do not actually believe it, but use the opportunity to express something else. Conspiracy theories may be complete nonsense, but still point to real problems. Räikkä likens them to mirrors of the worries that ordinary people may have in a society. Some conspiracy theories seem so crazy that it would seem that only the mentally ill could believe such nonsense. This seems to have led a lot of people to think that only the insane believe in conspiracy theories. Jukka Häkkinen discusses studies about this connection between mental health issues and conspiracy theories in his book. There is some evidence that paranoid people with an inclination for boredom like to concoct conspiracy theories, and that those who are prone to delusion and psychotic experiences are more likely than the average person to believe in fake news and conspiracy theories. People who support conspiracy theories also have suicidal thoughts, feelings of worthlessness, loneliness, and trouble sleeping more than the average. It has also been found that a lot of conspiracy beliefs seem to be concentrated on the same people. That is, those who believe in one conspiracy theory are likely to believe in several of them, even if those theories are mutually contradictory. According to sociologist Ted Kurtzel, this is because the conspiratorial thinking that leads the person to believe one outlandish conspiracy theory also leads them to believe others. Häkkinen mentions that an experiment by Petar Lukic also found that people tend to believe contradictory conspiracy theories. They tried to justify this by claiming to realize the contradiction, but considering it unimportant, as their point is that all the conspiracy theories they believe are possibilities. The problem I would like to point out in that is that surely whatever evidence there might be cannot point at mutually contradictory explanations simultaneously. Believing that the theories are all equally possible thus would be unjustified, irrational. I will return to this point later. Neither Räikkä nor Häkkinen believe that belief in conspiracy theories is explained by insanity. There just cannot be that many delusional people among us. Häkkinen accepts that there are similarities between paranoia and belief in conspiracy theories, but as a study by Roald Imhoff and Pia Lamberti has shown, the two are different. A paranoid person is generally distrustful of others and believe others to be plotting against them personally, while the conspiracy theorist believes the target of nefarious plans to be some wider group of people. The latter also usually see a political motivation rather than just some unfounded hostility for the conspiracy. Räikkä notes that researchers increasingly often state that conspiracy theories are for losers. This sentence can be used to mean either of two things. One, that the losers of elections are more likely to believe in conspiracy theories than the winners are. And two, people who believe in conspiracy theories belong to a marginalized group or are people who have little trust in the political, economic or epistemic elites. Both Häkkinen and Räikkä agree that there seems to be a negative correlation between level of education and belief in conspiracy theories. Those with low education are more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. While education should increase one's cognitive skills, and that may explain the reduction in conspiracy beliefs among the highly educated, things are not always this clear-cut. It is sometimes rational to disbelieve the commonly accepted official explanation for the event and to believe in the existence of a conspiracy. According to Räikkä, this would be the case when the person believes that a possible conspiracy would be very harmful for themselves, and being wrong about the official explanation would not seem to be harmful for them. People from low-income social classes and disadvantaged minorities, in both cases people typically with a low level of education, are the most likely to believe in conspiracy theories. These same groups of people have reason to believe in certain kinds of conspiracies that would be harmful for them. For example, the Tuskegee syphilis study alone is plenty of reason to distrust authorities. Falsely believing in a conspiracy theory would be a small price to pay for not believing in the existence of a real conspiracy. Häkkinen points out that trust in social institutions is low among supporters of certain parties or candidates. If a person does not trust the authorities or institutions of society, they are prone to believe in conspiracies. This explains why conspiracy theories are popular in the political extremes and among supporters of ideologies that see things in black and white, while providing simple solutions to real and thus usually complex problems. In this, the ideologies already resemble conspiracy theories. Häkkinen also discusses the work of sociologists Charlotte Ward and David Walsh, who have coined the term conspirituality to refer to a combination of conspiracy theories and New Age spirituality. These are the kind of mega-conspiracy theories where some secret cabal is supposedly controlling the whole of mankind. This sort of thinking, where religions, paranormal beliefs, and conspiracy theories are combined, is also often called occulture. Conspiracy theories tend to be of the irrational kind, but before we start accusing various groups of people for supporting such irrational ways of thinking, Räikkä wisely recommends that we should ask ourselves whether our own behavior might be part of the reason why there is so much of such thinking, and why it doesn't seem to be waning. He points out that as long as there are marginalized groups of people who are treated with disrespect by the majority, those people will have no reason to trust the knowledge produced by the well-to-do majority. If we can do something to improve the situation of the minority, it seems we ought to do so. We should listen to them and help them achieve equality among us. This, of course, requires collective effort. Räikkä notes that in academic research on conspiracy theories, the promoters are usually assumed to believe what they promote, especially if they state that they believe in the so-called theories in question. This is called the doxastic assumption. The standard description of conspiracy theories includes this assumption. This description is called standard because it is how conspiracy theories are assumed to work in most academic research. Someone or a small number of people are assumed to develop the conspiracy theory, perhaps as an alternative to an official explanation of an event. Afterwards, belief in the theory begins to spread. The problem for the standard description is that neither the developers nor other promoters of conspiracy theories necessarily believe those theories to be true. In some cases, the developers don't believe in the story themselves, but others do. In other cases, someone may believe in the theory they've developed, but others spread it without believing in it, for example, as a joke. Some conspiracy theories were developed as jokes to begin with, but morphed into something more serious. I think that may well be the case with flat Earth theories. Räikkä lists 6 different reasons that have motivated the design of conspiracy theories. 1. Humor. 2. Making money. 3. Saving one's own skin. 4. Propaganda. 5. To hamper decision making. And 6. To cover up real conspiracies. Those who design conspiracy theories as part of some money-making scheme don't believe their stories themselves, but may be able to convince large numbers of other people to believe them. A mixture of fact and fiction can be used to intentionally mislead people. This is the point of agnotological literature. But sometimes it seems that people do not know what they believe or don't believe. From the behavioristic point of view, a person's actual beliefs can be inferred from their behavior. Räikkä uses the example of a person who believes themselves to not be racist, yet displaying racism in their behavior. If a belief is understood this way, it would be fairly common for people to be mistaken about their own beliefs. They could honestly report their belief, or lack thereof, but be wrong. They could also mean to lie about their beliefs and unintentionally say what they actually do or don't believe. The psychological or representational understanding of belief is the simple view that a person believes something when they think it is true, that the state of affairs obtains, Räikkä explains. How a person acts can be explained by appealing to attitudes and motives involving beliefs. This understanding of belief is obviously at odds with the idea that a person might be wrong about what they believe. What is possible is that a person considers a claim to have some probability of being true, as I previously explained. According to research, proponents of conspiracy theories often believe in several different conspiracy theories, even some that contradict each other. This could seem especially irrational, but as Räikkä points out, there is no such problem in promoting contradicting conspiracy theories if one does not believe those theories to be true simultaneously, but rather just considers them all to be valid hypotheses. For example, you might believe that your spouse is either at their workplace or at the local cafe. You don't believe that they are in both places at once, but they could be in either one. Similarly, you might think that either of two competing conspiracy theories is true. When filling a simple questionnaire about conspiracy beliefs, you could choose to answer that you do believe in both conspiracy theories. A proponent of conspiracy theories might hope any one of several conflicting theories to be true, but would not want to think of it as hope. That is why, if asked, they would report that they believe the theories to be true. At that moment, they might think that they believe the theory in question, even if they don't actually quite believe it in a strict sense. But like I mentioned earlier, it can hardly be the case that there is justification to believe these contradicting theories simultaneously. It is far more likely that none of those contradictory beliefs is justified. Sometimes the point of promoting a conspiracy theory might have little to do with actually believing it, but rather to serve some other important purpose. Räikkä gives as an example the desire to keep discussion about the potential dangers of vaccinations going. The point of supporting a vaccination conspiracy theory could be communicative in this sense, about conveying the importance of the topic of discussion rather than actually believing what the theory claims about the vaccine. Räikkä considers this kind of communication similar to small talk or even bullshit, as defined by Harry Frankfurt, in that people using such speech acts do have some purpose, but they don't care whether whatever they are saying is true or not. Very often conspiracy theories, especially those of the political type, are strongly connected to tribalism. The truth of the theory in such cases may actually be irrelevant to the proponents, Räikkä explains, because vocally supporting a conspiracy theory in this case functions as a banner. It is used to tell everyone what tribe or political or cultural group one belongs to or wants to be a member of. Jukka Häkkinen gives some psychological explanations for belief in conspiracy theories. He first lists typical features of conspiracy theories as follows. According to the theory, 1. There are individuals or groups who advance their goal in secrecy. 2. Things are not as they appear. There is a real world behind the world of appearances. 3. Things don't happen by accident, but because someone wants them to happen. Häkkinen goes on to explain how in our everyday lives we tend to speculate about hidden motives and devious designs to account for events and other people's actions. If we hear laughter, we may easily think that others are laughing at us, at our expense. And we constantly try to read other people's body language and gaze to figure out what they really think about us. We are keenly aware of the fact that beneath the surface, people often have hidden motives, so we need to examine their apparent motives critically, even for our own protection. Once we have formed a theory about their actions, it may be difficult to let go of it afterwards, especially if our theory is connected to our identity, political or religious views, or group membership. It is not important for our brains to be able to reach the truth or even verisimilitude, but to help us survive and prosper in the given situation. This means that the first theory that works well enough tends to stick. Holding on to it is efficient from the point of view of the economics of the brain. There is no point in wasting resources by looking further into it. Our brains seek patterns, and there are differences between how easily individuals recognize patterns in their observations, whether there actually is a pattern to be observed or not. Häkkinen discusses experiments where people were shown images of static noise that did not in fact contain any patterns. Even so, some test subjects were especially prone to recognizing patterns in them. These individuals were also more likely to believe in conspiracy theories than the other subjects were. This, I believe, is related to what has also been noticed regarding mental health. People with depression make more realistic observations without adding to what is actually observable as much as mentally healthy people do. I wonder if then people with depression are less likely to believe in conspiracy theories. That might be something for psychologists to look into. There are evolutionary reasons for social animals like humans to develop a mechanism for generating what in psychology is called a theory of mind. This means automatically attributing minds even to inanimate objects, but especially to other people. By understanding others as having minds capable of feelings like jealousy, envy, and hatred, as well as having intentions, motivations, and so on, we are able to predict their behavior to some extent. This makes it possible for us to detect real or imagined conspiracies. Häkkinen notes that when our suspicions of conspiracy are directed at an outgroup, such as immigrants, Jews, or Muslims, we tend to easily see them as a unified, coordinated group of people, almost as if they shared a single mind. Our brains may create a theory of mind for the whole group, the same way they normally do for individual people. When, as often is the case, we have limited and unclear information, those who avoid uncertainty are more prone to accept available conspiracy explanations, according to Häkkinen. Experiments suggest that belief in conspiracies is a way for the brain to alleviate anxiety caused by uncertainty. The tendency to avoid uncertainty is not a fixed attribute, but rather depends on the situation. While personality traits and life experiences no doubt influence it, situational factors like being angry or tired, stressed or feeling threatened obviously affect it. The good thing about this is that we can be aware of such factors and how our minds work in general and use this knowledge to reduce the likelihood of us forming unjustified beliefs in great conspiracies, among other things. Besides uncertainty, randomness also causes most people anxiety. Häkkinen explains that we try to alleviate such anxieties by inventing explanations to reduce or remove coincidences and the effects of chance. As with attempts to deal with cognitive dissonance, explained by Leon Festinger, the explanation one can come up with in order to alleviate anxiety does not have to be good as long as it can be used to trick one's own mind to feel better. Coincidences and big events are especially important for us to explain away because of the implication to our worldview of accepting such randomness. That is why significant events easily lead to the creation of conspiracy theories, as has been repeatedly observed. The bigger the event, the bigger the cause is thought to be, even if there is logically no reason why that should be the case. The bias known as the just world hypothesis shows how the moral significance of events is important to us. We want to believe that the world is fundamentally just, so that good deeds are rewarded and bad deeds punished. Unfortunately, this can lead us to blame the victims. Surely they must have done something to deserve what happened to them. Such victim blaming is fundamentally selfish behavior, as it is done in order to protect one's own weak mind from the mere notion of uncontrollable, random, uncaring reality, resulting in piling hostile judgment on the people already suffering because of the tragedy or crime we are trying to explain by blaming them. Superstitions in general are the result of the same psychological need to feel in control when we in fact are not. We should grow up and accept reality as it is. Häkkinen highlights the significance of confirmation bias, especially in combination with the internet, as reasons for beliefs in conspiracy theories. We tend to seek and select information that agrees with what we already believe, and online, especially in social media, we usually prefer groups and other sources of information that share our views and opinions. This is relaxing compared to the mental anguish that contradictory information might cause. The speed of online searches enables us to quickly find sources supporting our opinions, and social media enables us to find and join groups dedicated to the most bizarre views. It seems to me that social media is one of the worst inventions ever, exactly because it enables people to create a kind of mass delusion, as people with the strangest notions can find lots of like-minded people online, and after a while they may start believing their views to be normal, even the majority view. It certainly doesn't help when even some mainstream media platforms support such delusional worldviews. Religious and other worldviews and ideologies are often connected to conspiracy theories because they form around core beliefs that their believers then try to defend. Häkkinen gives as an example those who believe in an unregulated market economy and therefore do not like restrictions related to attempts to mitigate the climate crisis. These beliefs and attitudes make it easy for them to believe that scientists conspire to exaggerate or lie about climate change and the role of the human race in it. He also explains that once a conspiracy theory has been accepted, it tends to become an important belief with a lot of thought and work behind it. This makes the believer more reluctant to let go of it, as per the sunk cost fallacy, instead making them do their best to defend the belief with their full brain capacity. Those attacking the cherished theory can now be seen as part of the conspiracy or promoters of fake news. Juha Räikkä also discusses some biases and fallacies in connection with conspiracy beliefs. A person suffering from intentionality bias, also known as intention bias, is someone who perceives a lot more intentionality, plans and agenthood in events than is justified, and more than people in general do. This may explain why they believe in conspiracy theories. It can also explain superstitious beliefs. In fact, Räikkä points out that people who believe in conspiracy theories are also more likely to believe in paranormal phenomena than the average person is. They can also perceive significance in mere noise and also in pseudo-profound bullshit. Proportionality bias refers to the tendency to believe that the cause and effect have to be proportional in a sense. A significant, important or large event must have an equally large cause. The assassination of an important world leader cannot possibly be the work of a lone gunman, for example. This leads to belief in a conspiracy. Conjunction fallacy is a statistical fallacy where the probability of an event in conjunction with other events is considered higher than the probability of the event alone. This cannot logically be true, of course. At least one study, according to Räikkä, found that proponents of conspiracy theories fall for this fallacy more than people on average. Several studies have found that proponents of conspiracy theories are significantly prone to confirmation bias, seeking evidence in support of one's own view while ignoring contrary evidence. Räikkä explains that an important part of critical thinking that conspiracy theorists seem to be lacking is source criticism, being able to distinguish between reliable and unreliable sources. Instead of practicing healthy skepticism toward individual statements by experts, they doubt the combined work of whole institutions. This doubt is based on their own private thinking, so-called alternative sources of information, or specific results of scientific studies that are generally considered doubtful. Räikkä also explains that studies show that people who believe in conspiracy theories usually overestimate their own understanding of politics and society. They believe themselves to be more difficult to dupe than the general public who, in their view, are constantly being manipulated. The conspiracy believer thinks that information in society is controlled by the top of a hierarchy, a small group of people who decide what the official truth is. People who think like this don't like being called conspiracy theorists because of the negative connotations of the term and prefer terms like critical thinker. Unfortunately, when their critical thinking abilities have been tested, they have not reached the average level, according to Räikkä. Many of such conspiracy theorists seem to have an inflated ego. Häkkinen explains that this is at least partially caused by the natural way in which we pay more attention to our successes than failures, and also remember the former better than the latter. This is connected to how most of us seem to be hardwired in such a way as to defend our ego, our self-esteem. Most people seem to think that they are better drivers than the average person, for example. If others fail to recognize the brilliance of our conspiracy theory, it just proves how superior our intellect is. Häkkinen also warns that thinking of ourselves as too smart or too highly educated to fall for stupid conspiracy theories can actually make us vulnerable to them, as we may then not be prepared to resist their lure. Räikkä states that we are generally justified in believing the established, more or less consensus views of the knowledge-producing parties. Even when the aforementioned are not in agreement with each other, conspiracy theories are not the most promising explanations available. We generally rely on the testimonies of others. Learning things from others is probably more important for us than observing and deducing things ourselves. Even science relies on trust. All the fields of science form, Räikkä explains, a network of intertwined knowledge that makes research and new discoveries possible. Huge global research projects build upon the works of others in collaboration. When a person receives information, their belief in that information is justified if it was justified for the source of the information. This resembles remembering in that neither testimony nor recall actually produce new knowledge. According to the reductionist view, belief in the information received through testimony is justified only if one is justified in trusting the source, the person providing the testimony. This is called the reductionist view because it reduces the justification for the belief to an acceptable, more immediately justified basis for the belief. According to the anti-reductionist view, such a reduction is not necessary, as believing the claim is justified unless there is a separate reason not to believe it. Simply put, reductionists require trust to be justified, while anti-reductionists assume trustworthiness. Conspiracy theorists don't seem to deny the trustworthiness of mainstream media when they report on things like massive frauds and embezzlements by scientists, government officials, or companies. Somehow, it is only when they present views disagreeing with the conspiracy theory that they are not to be trusted. When epistemic authorities like scientists and proper journalists are practically unanimous, it makes sense to trust them rather than conspiracy theorists who have not been able to provide enough evidence for their claims to reopen the case in question. Räikkä calls this the presumption of trust. The alternative to trusting such sources of information would mean distrusting everything we are unable to personally verify. That wouldn't leave us with much knowledge. Our ability to function would be seriously limited if we honestly adopted such a view and tried to live according to it consistently. The basis of trust is the belief in the benevolence of the knowledge-producing parties. Someone who does not consider them benevolent and is unable to identify with them will not trust them. People usually trust sources that share several beliefs with them. As Räikkä points out, this can lead to polarization and starkly contrasting views between groups of people. Conspiracy theorists like to tell people to do their own research, relying only on what can be called alternative sources. The problems with this demand are that 1. These alternative sources are unreliable, and that 2. We are unable to assess expert knowledge ourselves, except in the very rare cases when we are experts in the subject ourselves. We can, however, assess expertise. Räikkä explains that we can carefully go through the arguments presented by experts. If those arguments are full of logical fallacies or involve lizard people, the Knights Templar, and other suspicious elements like that, it is reasonable to ignore the so-called expert. Conspiracy theories are not mainstream among the experts, and they are not considered serious contenders as explanations for events. Even mainstream media is somewhat reliable in that mistakes and falsehoods spread by mainstream publications are revealed easily because they are so widely followed by numerous different parties. There are even mechanisms in place to monitor mainstream news media to make sure that there will be at least some repercussions if they are caught publishing unjustified claims. This doesn't mean everything they publish is true, but Räikkä emphasizes that it would be odd if mainstream media were in general unreliable and the so-called alternative media were always reliable. Truly skeptical thinking would require not just doubting what you don't like to hear, but doubting everything equally. Critical examination of the source of a claim would always be a good idea. What do other sources report about the same event or subject? Can the facts of the case be checked from independent sources? Are the original sources available? What is the quality of the article or other source in general? Räikkä notes that while belief in conspiracy theories does not seem to be usually caused by insanity, such beliefs may lead to problems for mental health. Conspiracy theorists do not appear to be satisfied and calm, well-adjusted individuals, but instead angry, anxious, disappointed, and frustrated. They loudly proclaim their doubts and demand ending cover-ups and revealing the evil conspirators with considerable expressions of hate. Such a negative state of mind is contrary to the mechanisms that lead to conspiracy beliefs in the first place, because those mechanisms work only on the short term, reducing anxiety caused by observed randomness and lack of control in the present. The explanation provided by the conspiracy does the job in the short term, calming the mental distress and making it easier to cope with the immediate problem. Unfortunately, in the long term, the accepted belief may lead to negative emotions and attitudes towards certain groups of people who are essentially made into scapegoats by the conspiracy theory. There are far too many, some recent, horrible cases where this has led to violence toward the perceived enemies. This is especially typical of far-right extremism. Often people are interested in conspiracy theories because of boredom, as stories of conspiracies can be highly entertaining. The initial interest, Häkkinen notes, can turn into negative experiences as one tries to discuss the conspiracy with others and is met with derision, belittling, and being dismissed. This can lead to conflict with loved ones and a deeper immersion in conspiracy content and social media groups devoted to them. The conspiracy theory can become a part of the person's identity and a source of community that provides a sense of belonging. I want to make clear that these seemingly good things can lead to very harmful consequences, as one can be very strongly manipulated by them, as numerous cults have shown throughout history. It is obvious how conspiracy theories are being used in US politics, mostly, but not only, by Republicans, especially those manipulating the MAGA crowd. The attempted coup of January 6, 2021 was the most blatant expression of this manipulation. Conspiracy theories have motivated terrorist attacks, such as that of Timothy McVeigh in 1995 in Oklahoma City, Anthony Warner in 2020 in Nashville, Patrick Crusius in El Paso in 2019, and many others around the world, including the mass murders committed by Anders Breivik in Norway's Oslo and Utøya in 2011, and by Brenton Tarrant in Christchurch, New Zealand in 2019. Besides causing outright terrorism, conspiracy theories can be massively harmful in causing people to refuse vaccinations or otherwise make bad health-related decisions. Räikkä points out that conspiracy theories about acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS, according to which HIV/AIDS is a story invented to curb population growth, have had a very harmful effect on how people behave. Those who believe this conspiracy theory do not care enough about protecting themselves or their partners from the disease or other STDs, and also are less eager to seek treatment than they should. Studies about vaccine conspiracies have found similar harmful behavior among believers. Reluctance to get vaccinated. Besides putting themselves at risk, which I for one wouldn't much care about, they endanger the whole population by lowering herd immunity. Occasionally this leads to outbreaks that cost lives. Also, several conspiracy theories target ethnic and religious minorities, and that has led to persecutions. The motivation to invent conspiracy theories is sometimes selfish and low, intentionally stigmatizing various groups of people in a racist manner, even inciting to violence against minorities. Some conspiracy theories increase the polarization of society and reduce people's trust in democracy, the authorities, and even each other. But as Räikkä also explains, the harm caused by conspiracy beliefs in general is not limited to those clear examples, but rather they all create doubt about the trustworthiness of epistemic authorities. This could lead to a society where epistemic trust does not exist, and it is no longer possible to plan one's life rationally. Even if no conspiracy theorist intentionally seeks to erode the public's trust in the authorities or the media, or wants to make epidemics more common, that is the unintentional result of the collective behavior when people invent and spread conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theorists often claim that people like them make it harder for various conspirators to get away with their nefarious deeds. Räikkä notes that it is not generally the conspiracy theorists at various websites or podcasts that function as a deterrent for big corporations considering illegal activities, and it is not those alternative sources that reveals their plans to the public at large, but rather it is journalists, police investigators, prosecutors, and academics at universities that the corporations may fear, and who are the people who actually do sometimes expose their activities. Even competing corporations are a threat to potential conspirators because they would gladly use the opportunity to benefit from revealing such activities. According to the classic definition of knowledge, for a proposition or idea to qualify as knowledge, it has to be 1. Believed by someone to be true, 2. It has to be true, and 3. The belief must be epistemically justified. There have to be good reasons to believe it, and those reasons must be undefeated by counter-arguments. It seems obvious to me that we should all strive for knowledge, to seek the truth and avoid falsehoods. We can only do so by doing our best to adopt only justified beliefs. William K. Clifford asserted that it is even our ethical duty to do so, and that failing to do so is unethical. As Räikkä notes, we are unable to directly control the formation of our beliefs. We, at least generally speaking, form beliefs spontaneously, but Clifford's ethics of belief seems to be based on a voluntaristic notion of belief formation, according to which we can decide what to believe. I happen to think that we can, at least to some degree, manipulate the way we form beliefs, but agree that a rational mind simply believes claims to the degree those claims are justified. The problem with that is that some people clearly seem to be irrational, not just some, but a lot of the time. Trying to convince them to think and behave rationally seems difficult, if such an understatement is acceptable. Räikkä points out that even if we are unable to control our psychological mechanisms of belief formation, we can control what we do before we start believing something. We can approach the question at hand openly. We can at least try to assess the evidence in an unbiased manner. We can pay critical attention to our own interests and how they are likely to bias our thinking. This way, we can at least do our best to allow our rational minds to form the correct beliefs rationally. Häkkinen advises us to read good quality newspapers and magazines that present more varied views than our social media bubbles might. I would add that simply trying to look for different sources with different viewpoints and biases would seem like a good idea. This does not mean listening to just any crazy person, as one can still hold one's sources to high standards of quality. As Häkkinen would agree, it is necessary to remember the possibility that we are wrong, and the only way for this to be revealed, as we should hope to happen if that is the case, is to subject ourselves to arguments that contradict our own. Perhaps we could just use simple epistemic rules to counter conspiracy theories. A common argument against conspiracy theories states that they are not falsifiable, even in principle. This view, based on Karl Popper's philosophy of science, views them as pseudoscientific, or at least problematic. Räikkä does not share this view because this falsifiability does not seem to be a completely universal requirement in science either. Popper's view, while popular among science enthusiasts, is not held by most philosophers of science anymore. Another common argument against conspiracy theories is that their support correlates with cognitive biases and thus they should not be taken seriously. Against this, Räikkä notes that cognitive biases are universal, but only some people support conspiracy theories. There may be a connection, but there seems to be more behind belief in conspiracy theories. In some cases, individuals have reason to suspect epistemic authorities and distrust elites that have been shown to be untrustworthy, or even actively seeking to harm certain people. Members of that group of people are understandably suspicious of the elites and epistemic authorities that seem to be aligned with those elites. This is something epistemic authorities need to remember. We cannot lump all conspiracy theories together and somehow get rid of them all at once. There is no general answer to all conspiracy theories, as some of them may even turn out to be true, so they have to be assessed one at a time. What I suggest should help everyone to avoid unjustified beliefs is the adoption of a philosophical attitude, epistemic humility when encountering any information, especially anything that seems really interesting or that one is starting to consider as an important part of their thinking. In any such case, we should try to retain our ability to think critically, reminding ourselves that anything we consider true right now could turn out to be false, and that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. It is impossible to ban conspiracy theories or to prevent them from spreading, at least in open societies. Educating and informing the public seems overly optimistic to Räikkä as well. He finds it best to simply accept discussions and suspicions of conspiracies as one of the ways mainstream media and people in general use in their attempts to understand reality. Political and economic conspiracies are rather mundane, and bringing this into public awareness and ordinary discussion could remove much of the fascination from grand or mega conspiracy theories. An important way to limit the spread of harmful conspiracy theories would be, according to Räikkä, to increase public trust. Conspiracy theories mostly arise from a distrust in society and a sense of injustice. People who have a good reason to trust the institutions around them, especially the epistemic authorities, can see their benevolence. Such authorities do not treat them arrogantly or leave them out. They tolerate opinions that are outside the mainstream. They do not abandon people economically and do not tolerate discrimination. They make it clear that the playing field is even, as Räikkä puts it. Just to briefly summarize, I first explained that conspiracy theories discussed in this context are about unusual beliefs about conspiracies, not accepted explanations of events based on actual revealed conspiracies, but rather strange beliefs connected to uncommon worldviews. And that is why they are of interest to researchers in psychology and philosophy, among others. I gave some examples of arguments for such beliefs and reasons for not accepting them. I then spent a considerable amount of time explaining who are the kinds of people to believe in conspiracy theories and why they do so. I pointed out that some kind of belief in some conspiracy theories is actually rather common, although there are many different ways of understanding what this belief even actually means. I explained how social factors, for example, predispose some people to believe in them, and what kinds of faulty reasoning and cognitive biases cause us to fall for conspiracy theories. I then gave some reasons to consider such beliefs harmful and worth avoiding, and finally offered some meager advice for doing just that, and the main reason why that is difficult. There are many very different kinds of conspiracy theories, and some of them might even turn out to be true, even if that is unlikely. The main advice I can give is to improve your thinking, and one way you can go about doing just that is by watching my series or reading the book Introduction to Philosophy and Critical Thinking, which you can find as a playlist on my channel. Familiarizing yourself with some of the famous conspiracy theories may also work as a vaccine against conspiracy theories in general. But for that, you need to look into skeptical literature, like the Magazine for Science and Reason, the Skeptical Inquirer, or at least watch videos like those of the Minute Minuteman, Milo Rossi, or the video on How to Avoid Conspiracy Theories by Jimmy the Welsh Viking. If you made it all the way here, I want to genuinely thank you for watching, and I hope to see you back on my channel soon. Bye! If you wish to support my channel, please click thumbs up, subscribe and share my videos. Any comments on the videos would also be welcome.